My phone buzzed while I was sitting in the boardroom, waiting for a meeting with investors. The text came from someone I hadn't heard from in almost 3 years. Emily. My younger sister. Hey. I need a favor. My car finally died. The dealership approved me, but they need a cosigner. Can you help me? I'll only need your signature. I stared at the message. 3 years. No birthday wishes. No Christmas calls. No how are you? Nothing. Then suddenly. She needed me. I smiled and typed just 2 words. Keep dreaming. I pressed send. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked into the meeting. I figured that was the end of it. I couldn't have been more wrong. 10 minutes later, when the meeting ended, I looked at my phone. 38 missed calls. 96 text messages. And 1 message from my father written completely in capital letters. If you don't help your sister, don't ever call me your father again. You are no longer welcome at any family gathering. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because they honestly believed they still had the power to hurt me. What they didn't know was that I had spent the last 15 years preparing for this exact moment. And before sunrise, I would make one phone call that would destroy the perfect little family they had built on lies. My name is Victoria Hayes. If you looked at old family photographs, you'd think we were the perfect American family. A handsome father. A beautiful mother. 2 smiling daughters. Large suburban house. Golden retriever. Summer vacations. Christmas cards. Everything looked perfect. Pictures lie. Behind every smile was a reminder that one daughter mattered. The other simply existed. Emily was born when I was 3. The moment she arrived, my childhood ended. Mom called her our miracle. Dad called her Daddy's princess. They called me, be a good big sister. That sentence became my entire childhood. Give Emily your toys. Give Emily your room. Let Emily choose the restaurant. Let Emily open presents first. Let Emily win. Always Emily. Never me. When I was 10 years old, I won the regional science fair. I spent 6 months building a working solar-powered water purifier. My teacher said it was the best project she'd seen in years. The awards ceremony was on a Saturday afternoon. Dad promised he'd be there. Mom promised she'd be there. I stood on the stage scanning the audience. Every seat was full. Except the 2 reserved for my parents. They never came. Later that evening they walked into the house carrying shopping bags. Emily had wanted to go to the mall. Dad shrugged. We'll celebrate another day. We never did. A year later, Emily performed in a school dance recital. She stood in the 3rd row. She forgot half the routine. Mom cried. Dad bought flowers. Grandparents drove 4 hours. Afterward we went to the nicest steakhouse in town. I remember sitting there wondering, what does it feel like to matter that much? By high school, I had stopped trying. Not at school. At home. No matter what I accomplished, someone would always ask, but how's Emily doing? When I graduated as valedictorian, Dad missed the ceremony because Emily had a soccer tournament. She spent most of the game sitting on the bench. He never apologized. He simply handed me an envelope. Inside was a $50 bill. Congratulations. That was it. Emily barely graduated. My parents threw her a graduation party that cost more than my first semester of college. I remember helping clean up after everyone left. Mom smiled and said, "You understand, don't you? Emily needs more encouragement." That sentence stayed with me for years. Apparently, success required no celebration. Failure deserved fireworks. College changed everything. Not because life became easier. Because nobody cared where I came from. Professors only cared if I worked hard. Employers only cared if I produced results. For the first time, effort mattered. I earned scholarships. Worked evenings at a restaurant. Tutored students on weekends. Graduated with honors. Meanwhile, Emily changed majors 4 times. Dropped out twice. Moved back home. Blamed everyone except herself. According to my parents, none of it was her fault. The professors were unfair. Her bosses were jealous. Her friends were fake. The economy was terrible. There was always another excuse. Never accountability. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level job at a financial consulting firm in Chicago. My apartment was tiny. The heater barely worked. I owned 1 suit. 1 pair of dress shoes. A folding table instead of a dining room. But every paycheck represented something no one could take away. Freedom. I worked harder than everyone else. I stayed later. Studied while others went home. Volunteered for impossible projects. 5 years later, I became the youngest department manager in company history. 7 years later, vice president. 10 years later, chief strategy officer. People called me successful. They had no idea success wasn't my goal. My goal was never needing my family again. The funny thing about success: people who ignored you suddenly remember your birthday. It started with Facebook messages. Old classmates. Second cousins. Family friends. Then, Mom called. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years. Sweetheart. The word sounded strange coming from her. I miss you. I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, what happened? Silence. Finally. We'd love for you to visit. Why? Another pause. Then she sighed. Emily's going through a difficult time. There it was. The real reason. Emily. Always Emily. I politely declined. For the next 6 months, the phone calls continued. Birthday cards. Christmas invitations. Family barbecues. Suddenly I mattered. Not because they loved me. Because I had become useful. I could feel it. I just didn't know what they wanted yet. Until that message arrived. I need a cosigner. Most people would think refusing a signature was cruel. But here's what you don't know. This wasn't Emily's first car. Or her second. Or even her third. Dad had already bought her 3 vehicles over the years. A brand new sedan after high school. A luxury SUV after college. A sports coupe when she turned 30. Every single one ended the same way. Missed payments. Repossessions. Excuses. Then another bailout. This time, no bank would approve her. Because her credit score was destroyed. She owed money on credit cards. Personal loans. Medical bills. Even unpaid parking tickets. Yet somehow, she wanted another brand new luxury SUV. And my parents expected me to risk everything for it. They still believed I was the obedient daughter who would sacrifice herself to keep Emily smiling. They hadn't realized. That daughter disappeared years ago. The morning after I refused Emily's request, I woke up to my phone vibrating non-stop. At first, I assumed it was work. Instead, it was family. Not immediate family. Extended family. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Even people I barely remembered. Every message sounded almost identical. Emily says you're refusing to help. She's your sister. Family comes first. Your parents are heartbroken. I frowned. Emily had moved fast. She hadn't simply complained. She had launched a full-scale campaign. Against me. I ignored every message and drove to work. By lunchtime, my cousin Rachel called. Unlike everyone else, she never picked sides. When I answered, she didn't waste time. Victoria, don't believe anything you're hearing. What happened? Rachel sighed. They told everyone you became rich and greedy. I laughed. What else? She hesitated. They're saying Mom and Dad paid for your education, bought your first apartment, and helped build your career. I almost dropped my coffee. They said what? They're making you sound like an ungrateful millionaire who abandoned the family. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Because the truth was exactly the opposite. I had paid for every textbook. Every semester. Every meal. Every rent check. The only thing my parents ever gave me was another reason to work harder. That evening, my father called. For the first time in years. I answered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he cleared his throat. So? Have you changed your mind? No. You'd really let your own sister struggle? I leaned back in my chair. Did she struggle when you bought her first car? Silence. Or the second? Nothing. Or the third? His voice hardened. That's none of your business. I laughed softly. It became my business the moment you demanded my credit. He raised his voice. You owe this family. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Owe you? Everything you have is because we raised you. I felt 20 years of anger boiling beneath the surface. No. I have everything because I raised myself. He slammed the phone down. 5 seconds later, another text arrived. You'll regret this. I looked at those words for a long time. Then I whispered. No. You will. Friday evening. I received an unexpected visitor. Someone knocked on my apartment door. When I opened it, I froze. Aunt Margaret? She smiled sadly. I hope I'm not interrupting. She was carrying an old leather briefcase. The same one she'd owned since I was a child. We sat in my living room. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Finally, she opened the briefcase. Inside were dozens of folders. Old photographs. Letters. Bank statements. Legal papers. What is all this? She looked directly into my eyes. Your grandmother trusted me with these. My heart skipped. My grandmother? She nodded. She always knew your parents favored Emily. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She tried to stop it. My throat tightened. How? Margaret slowly removed a yellow envelope. Your name was written across the front. In your grandmother's handwriting. I hadn't seen that handwriting in over 20 years. My hands began shaking. Inside the envelope was a letter. My dearest Victoria. The words blurred through my tears. Your parents don't know I'm writing this. If you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I have watched you your entire life. You are kind. Honest. Strong. One day you'll discover that not everyone values those qualities. Especially inside your own family. Never let anyone convince you that you deserve less. Because you never did. Love always. Grandma Eleanor. I wiped my eyes. Aunt Margaret quietly placed another document beside the letter. This, she whispered, is why I came. It was a trust agreement. Created 26 years earlier. My grandmother had left her estate equally. 50% to Emily. 50% to me. I looked at the final page. Trustee. Michael Hayes. My father. Confused, I looked up. I never received anything. Margaret slowly nodded. I know. What happened? Margaret took a deep breath. Your father convinced everyone he was protecting the money until both daughters were older. So where did it go? She slid several bank statements across the table. Every transfer had one destination. Emily. Private school tuition. Luxury vacations. Cars. Designer stores. Down payment on a house. Business investments. One payment after another. Millions of dollars. Gone. My share. Used to build Emily's perfect life. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. Without a single conversation. I stared at the documents. This can't be legal. It isn't. My breathing became heavier. Why didn't anyone stop him? Margaret lowered her eyes. Because nobody wanted to believe he'd steal from one daughter to spoil another. I couldn't sleep that night. Every childhood memory suddenly made sense. The vacations I wasn't invited to. Emily's expensive gifts. The brand new cars. The shopping trips. The huge birthday parties. I thought my parents were simply spending their own money. They weren't. Part of it was mine. Every time they told me, we can't afford it. They were lying. They could afford it. They just chose Emily. Around 3 a.m. I opened my laptop. I searched for one of the best inheritance attorneys in Illinois. Then another. Then one of the country's top forensic accountants. By sunrise, 3 appointments were scheduled. I wasn't interested in arguing anymore. Arguments change opinions. Evidence changes lives. Monday morning. I walked into the office of Attorney Daniel Foster. He listened without interrupting. For almost 2 hours. He examined every document. Every bank statement. Every letter. When he finally leaned back in his chair, he smiled. Not because he was happy. Because he recognized something. Opportunity. This, he said quietly, is one of the strongest breach of trust cases I've seen in years. I frowned. Can we win? He looked directly at me. If these records are authentic. He paused. They're not just facing a lawsuit. They could lose everything. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. Hope. Attorney Daniel Foster didn't waste time. The very next morning, he introduced me to 2 people. A forensic accountant named Lisa Monroe. And a retired FBI financial investigator named Robert Kane. Robert looked at the pile of documents on the conference table before looking at me. Miss Hayes. I have one question. What is it? Do you want justice? He paused. Or revenge? I looked him straight in the eyes. I've wanted justice for 25 years. But after what they did. I leaned forward. I want the truth to be so public that nobody ever believes their lies again. Robert smiled. Then let's begin. For the next 3 weeks, my life became nothing but paperwork. Bank records. Property deeds. Insurance policies. Tax filings. Business registrations. Investment portfolios. Every single document painted the same picture. Emily had never built anything herself. Every major purchase in her adult life had been funded by money that should have belonged to me. The numbers kept growing. Hundreds of thousands. Then over 1 million. Then even more. Every time Lisa finished another report, she quietly whispered, "It gets worse." Meanwhile, back home, Emily was enjoying the attention. Rachel secretly sent me screenshots from Facebook. Emily had written, "Some people become successful and forget where they came from. I would never abandon my family." Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. "Stay strong. You're such a wonderful sister. Money changes people." Nobody knew the truth. I wasn't angry. I was patient. Because lies have expiration dates. Evidence doesn't. Then another post appeared. This time from my mother. A mother's heart breaks when one child turns against her own family. More sympathy. More fake tears. More people attacking me. One comment made me stop scrolling. A woman wrote, "Parents always sacrifice everything for their children." I laughed out loud. If only she knew. One Friday afternoon, Robert called me. "You need to come to the office." His voice sounded different. Almost excited. When I arrived, he spread aerial photographs across the table. Emily's house. I frowned. "What about it?" Robert pointed toward the purchase documents. "According to public records, your parents paid nearly the entire down payment." "I know." He shook his head. "No. You don't." He handed me another folder. The cashier's checks used for that payment had come directly from my grandmother's trust account. I couldn't believe it. Even Emily's dream house had been purchased with my inheritance. I closed my eyes. All those years, while I struggled to pay rent, Emily had been living inside my future. Just when I thought nothing could shock me anymore, Lisa discovered something strange. Several trust withdrawals didn't go to Emily. They disappeared somewhere else. Large transfers. Always the same destination. A company I'd never heard of. Hayes Property Holdings, LLC. Robert searched the company. 5 minutes later, he looked at me. "Your father owns it." "What does it do?" "It doesn't appear to do anything. No employees. No office. No website. Nothing. Just millions flowing through it." Daniel quietly leaned back. "This is where things become dangerous." Over the next week, subpoenas were filed. Financial institutions began responding. Every answer revealed another lie. The shell company owned 3 rental buildings, 2 vacation properties, commercial land, investment accounts. All purchased using money taken from the trust. My father hadn't simply favored Emily. He had secretly built an empire, using money that legally belonged to both daughters. While investigators worked, life at my parents' house continued as if nothing had happened. Then, an invitation arrived. Gold envelope. Embossed lettering. Emily's 35th birthday celebration. The entire family would attend. Even local politicians. Business owners. Church leaders. My father wanted everyone there. Daniel smiled after reading it. "When is the party?" "Saturday." He looked at Robert. Robert smiled. Then both men looked at me. "What?" Daniel slowly closed the invitation. "I think Saturday is the perfect day." I immediately understood. No. He nodded. Yes. If we're going public, let's make sure everyone sees it. Friday evening. My phone rang again. Dad. Against my better judgment, I answered. His voice sounded calm. Too calm. I've been thinking. So have I. You've embarrassed this family enough. I smiled. I haven't done anything yet. You still have time to apologize. I almost laughed. For what? For disrespecting your mother. For abandoning Emily. For acting like you're better than us. I stood near my apartment window overlooking downtown Chicago. Then quietly said. You still don't understand. What? This stopped being about a car weeks ago. Silence. What are you talking about? You'll find out tomorrow. Before he could answer, I ended the call. Saturday evening. My parents' backyard looked like something from a magazine. Luxury catering. Live band. Professional photographers. Champagne fountains. Designer decorations. Nearly 200 guests. Emily wore a sparkling silver dress. She smiled for photographs. Mom greeted everyone. Dad walked around shaking hands like the proud head of the family. Rachel secretly texted me. They're talking about you. Another message followed. Dad told everyone you were jealous. I smiled. Keep watching. Exactly at 7 p.m. 3 black SUVs turned onto the street. Nobody noticed at first. Then, 4 professionally dressed individuals stepped out. Each carrying leather briefcases. The music continued playing. Guests kept laughing. Until the first man asked. Is Michael Hayes present? My father turned around. I'm Michael. The man handed him a thick envelope. You've been officially served. The smile disappeared from Dad's face. Another woman walked toward my mother. Linda Hayes? She nodded nervously. You've also been served. T. Hen. Another investigator approached Emily. Emily Hayes? Yes. You are named in this civil action. The photographer stopped taking pictures. The music faded into silence. Conversations stopped. One by one. Every guest turned to watch. Emily opened the first page. Her hands began trembling. Across the top. In bold letters. State of Illinois. Civil complaint. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. Conversion of trust assets. Unjust enrichment. My father looked around desperately. People whispered. Phones came out. Someone started recording. The perfect family image began cracking. Right in front of everyone. By the time the birthday party ended, no one cared about Emily's cake. No one remembered the expensive decorations. Nobody even touched the champagne. Every guest left talking about only one thing. The lawsuit. By sunrise, videos from the party had already spread across social media. Someone had recorded the exact moment the legal papers were handed to my parents. Another guest had uploaded a close-up of Emily crying. Within hours, people who had spent years calling us the perfect family were asking the same question. What happened? My phone rang. Daniel Foster. It's begun. 3 days later. The first court hearing wasn't even about the money. It was about preserving evidence. Daniel requested an emergency order preventing my parents from selling property or moving money. The judge listened carefully. Then asked my father's attorney one simple question. Can you guarantee your clients won't transfer any assets? The attorney hesitated. That tiny hesitation changed everything. The judge signed the order immediately. Every major asset. Frozen. Investment accounts. Rental income. Commercial properties. Vacation homes. Even Emily's house. My father stared at the order as if he couldn't understand the words. For the first time in his life, someone had told him no. That Friday evening, someone knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, I almost laughed. Emily. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. No expensive jewelry. No perfect makeup. She looked exhausted. I opened the door. What do you want? She immediately started crying. Please. Can we talk? Against my better judgment, I let her inside. She sat on my couch and stared at the floor. I didn't know. I crossed my arms. Didn't know what? Mom and Dad told me Grandma left everything to me. I said nothing. They said you never wanted anything. They said you refused the inheritance. For several seconds, the room was completely silent. Then I slowly slid one document across the coffee table. My grandmother's original trust agreement. Emily picked it up. She read the first page. Then the second. Then the final signature page. Her face turned completely white. No. She whispered. They lied. Tears rolled down her face. They lied to both of us. For the first time, I realized something. Emily wasn't innocent. But she also wasn't told the truth. She had been raised inside a lie. Just like I had. Only our lies were different. 2 weeks later, Daniel called another meeting. When I walked into the conference room, a man I'd never seen before stood near the window. This is Richard Coleman, our former family accountant. The word former caught my attention. Richard looked terrified. I can't do this anymore. He placed a flash drive on the table. I kept copies. Copies of what? Everything. Every trust withdrawal. Every fake invoice. Every hidden account. Every property purchase. Every transfer into Hayes Property Holdings. Every forged explanation. Daniel inserted the drive into his laptop. Hundreds of files appeared. Years. And years. Of evidence. Richard lowered his head. Your father made me change the records. Why now? His eyes filled with tears. Because my granddaughter asked me last week what honesty means. I couldn't answer her. The forensic team spent nearly a month reviewing the files. Then, Lisa walked into Daniel's office carrying one final folder. This changes everything. Daniel looked up. What is it? Lisa slowly opened the folder. Inside was my grandmother's original handwritten journal. None of us even knew it existed. Every page described her fears. Every concern. Every warning. Then, one sentence made the entire room fall silent. If anything ever happens to me suddenly, investigate Michael immediately. I believe he has already begun taking money from the trust before my death. Daniel slowly closed the journal. This is no longer just a civil lawsuit. Robert nodded. This could become criminal. 8 months later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Financial experts testified for days. One witness after another described the same pattern. Money leaving the trust. Money entering secret accounts. Money funding Emily's lifestyle. Money buying investment properties. My father insisted he had done nothing wrong. I was protecting the family. Daniel stood. You mean protecting one child? No. You transferred trust money without permission. I intended to replace it. You never did. It was temporary. For 24 years? The courtroom became silent. Daniel displayed one chart after another. Colored arrows connected every account. Every property. Every dollar. The evidence wasn't emotional anymore. It was mathematical. Numbers don't lie. The judge took almost 3 hours to read the decision. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. Finally, he looked directly at my father. This court finds overwhelming evidence that the trustee violated his legal obligations. He continued reading. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. Conversion of trust assets. Civil conspiracy. Each word felt heavier than the last. Then came the judgment. Full restitution. Interest. Attorney fees. Punitive damages. The total exceeded $8.4 million. My mother began crying. Emily buried her face in her hands. My father didn't react. He simply stared straight ahead. Like a man who had finally run out of lies. As everyone left the courthouse, my father quietly called my name. Victoria. I stopped. He slowly walked toward me. For the first time in my life. He looked old. Not powerful. Not confident. Just tired. I made mistakes. I waited. I thought I was protecting your sister. I looked him directly in the eyes. No. You were protecting your favorite. His shoulders dropped. I never hated you. I answered softly. I know. You just never loved me enough. There was nothing left to say. I turned around. And walked away. Without looking back. Most people think revenge ends the day you win in court. It doesn't. That's only the beginning. The real punishment starts afterward. Within 48 hours of the verdict, banks began contacting my father's attorney. Insurance companies reviewed their policies. Business partners demanded explanations. Several investors immediately pulled out of Hayes Property Holdings. The company that had looked so powerful for years was collapsing from the inside. Employees started quitting. Tenants refused to renew leases. Contractors demanded overdue payments. The empire my father had secretly built was falling apart faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, I returned to work. People congratulated me. News reporters requested interviews. Television producers wanted my story. I declined every invitation. I hadn't fought this battle for fame. I fought it because little girls deserve to know that being ignored doesn't mean being worthless. Nearly 3 weeks passed. Then, Emily called. I almost didn't answer. Something told me I should. Her voice sounded completely different. No confidence. No entitlement. Just exhaustion. Victoria. Yes? I sold the house. I remained silent. I'm moving into a small apartment. Again. Silence. Then she quietly said, I spent my whole life believing I earned everything. But after reading all those documents, she began crying. I don't even know who I am anymore. For the first time, I actually felt sorry for her. Not because she'd lost money. Because she'd lost her identity. Everything she'd been told about herself had been built on lies. One Monday morning, Daniel called me before sunrise. His voice was unusually serious. I need you in my office. 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from him. A sealed envelope rested on his desk. Across the top, One line caught my attention. United States Department of Justice. What is this? Daniel Slow. LY opened the envelope. It's official. They've opened a criminal investigation. I stared at him. Against my father? And possibly others. Why? He slid another document toward me. Because your civil case uncovered something much bigger. Hidden tax records. False financial statements. Undisclosed foreign accounts. Money transferred overseas. For years. My father hadn't only hidden assets from me. He had allegedly hidden them from the government too. 2 weeks later. Someone unexpected appeared at my office. An elderly woman. Gray hair. Walking with a cane. The moment I saw her, I recognized her. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks. My next-door neighbor from childhood. She smiled. You've grown into exactly the woman your grandmother hoped you'd become. I hugged her. I haven't seen you in 20 years. I know. She handed me a small wooden box. Your grandmother asked me to give you this. Only if the truth ever came out. Inside the box were dozens of photographs. Birthday parties. School events. Christmas mornings. Every picture contained one heartbreaking detail. Emily surrounded by gifts. Me. Standing quietly in the background. Sometimes cropped out completely. Sometimes holding everyone else's coats. Sometimes taking the photographs. I wasn't missing from family memories. I had simply never been the center of them. Then, Mrs. Brooks handed me one final envelope. I think this belongs to you. Inside the envelope was an old USB drive. Written across it in faded ink. Conversation, do not destroy. Daniel hired an audio specialist to restore the recording. The next afternoon, we listened together. My grandmother's voice filled the room. Then, my father's voice. He sounded younger. Angrier. Grandmother said quietly. Victoria deserves exactly half. My father answered immediately. Emily needs more. Grandmother replied. Need doesn't change the will. Then came the sentence that made my blood run cold. My father laughed. Victoria is smart. She'll make her own money. But Emily won't. My grandmother answered. That isn't Victoria's responsibility. He replied. It is now. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Daniel slowly removed his glasses. This recording destroys every defense. A month later, Emily requested to meet. This time, at a small coffee shop. No lawyers. No reporters. Just the two of us. When she arrived, she looked healthier. Simpler clothes. No designer handbag. No expensive watch. She sat down. I owe you something. What? She placed her phone on the table. I recorded a video. What kind of video? She looked directly at me. I'm telling everyone the truth. That evening, Emily uploaded the video. She admitted our parents had lied. She apologized publicly. She accepted responsibility for benefiting from stolen money. She asked people to stop attacking me. Within hours, the internet turned against my parents. Not because I had spoken. Because Emily had. Several months later, Aunt Margaret invited everyone willing to come. One final dinner. Not to reconcile. To say goodbye. Only 6 people came. Me. Emily. Aunt Margaret. Rachel. 2 elderly cousins. My parents didn't come. Halfway through dinner, Margaret stood up. I've watched this family destroy itself. She looked at both of us. But I refuse to let hatred become your inheritance. She turned toward me. Victoria. You already won. She looked at Emily. And you still have time to become someone your children can admire. Nobody cried. Nobody argued. For the first time in decades, the dinner ended peacefully. Almost a year had passed since the civil verdict. Life was finally becoming peaceful. Then one rainy Tuesday morning, Daniel called. I knew something was different the moment I heard his voice. They did it. Who? The federal grand jury. I closed my laptop. What happened? They returned an indictment. I didn't answer. Neither did Daniel. Finally, he quietly said, your father has officially been charged. The charges filled nearly 30 pages. Wire fraud, tax fraud, false financial reporting, concealment of assets, money laundering, years of deception, reduced to black ink on white paper. The man who had always believed he was smarter than everyone else was now standing before the law. The news broke before sunrise. Television helicopters circled the courthouse. Every local station interrupted its morning broadcast. A reporter stood outside my parents' former mansion. Former. Because it no longer belonged to them. The property had already been sold to satisfy part of the judgment. My father was now living in a small rented townhouse. At 7:12 a.m., federal agents knocked on his front door. Neighbors watched through their windows. No one came outside. No one defended him. He walked out wearing the same confidence he had worn for decades. But confidence doesn't matter when your hands are in handcuffs. As the agents escorted him toward the vehicle, a reporter shouted, Mr. Hayes, do you have anything to say to your daughters? For a brief second, he looked directly into the camera, then lowered his head and kept walking. A week later, a handwritten envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a single letter. Victoria, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. For years, I convinced myself I was keeping the family together. But the truth is, I helped destroy it. Every time your father favored Emily, I stayed quiet. Every time you cried yourself to sleep, I pretended not to hear. Because silence was easier than confrontation. You deserved a mother. Instead, you got a specta. Tor. I'm sorry. Love. Mom. I read it 3 times. Then folded it carefully. Some wounds never completely heal. But apologies can stop them from getting deeper. The criminal case lasted almost 6 months. Unlike the civil trial, there were no emotional speeches. Only facts. Numbers. Emails. Audio recordings. Bank records. And one devastating witness. Richard Coleman, the former accountant. He calmly described every illegal transaction, every false document, every instruction my father had given him. The prosecutor asked, "Why are you testifying today?" Richard answered, "Because the truth deserves better than my silence." No one in the courtroom moved. Then, the prosecutor played my grandmother's recording. The entire courtroom listened. Every word echoed through the room. When the recording ended, the jury didn't need an explanation. They had already heard everything. The judge looked directly at my father. "You were entrusted with protecting your family. Instead, you exploited that trust. He paused. The greatest theft in this courtroom wasn't the money. It was the childhood you stole from one daughter. I felt tears forming. Not because I hated him. Because someone had finally said, out loud, what I had felt my entire life. The sentence was announced. Several years in federal prison. Heavy financial penalties. Permanent professional disqualification. Everything he had spent decades building ended in one afternoon. People assumed I would celebrate. Throw a party. Buy something expensive. Instead, I did something else. Using part of the recovered inheritance, I created the Eleanor Hayes Foundation. Named after my grandmother. Its mission was simple. Help young people who had been abandoned, ignored, or emotionally neglected. Receive scholarships, counseling, and opportunities. Within the first year, more than 200 students received help. Every acceptance letter carried one sentence. Your worth has never depended on someone else's ability to see it. That sentence became our motto. Emily never asked me for money again. Instead, she found a job. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to earn something that actually belonged to her. She started at the bottom. Long hours. Modest pay. Tiny apartment. For the first time in her life, she experienced consequences. And strangely, she became happier. One afternoon she smiled and said, "You know what's funny?" "What?" "My first paycheck felt better than every expensive gift I ever received." I smiled. "Because it was yours." Nearly 3 years later, I visited my grandmother's grave. The cemetery was quiet. Fresh flowers rested beside her headstone. Someone had been there before me. I already knew who. Emily. I placed another bouquet beside hers. Then quietly whispered, "You were right. I made my own future." A gentle breeze moved through the trees. For the first time, I didn't feel angry anymore. Just grateful. Because surviving had made me stronger than revenge ever could. 5 years later, people often asked about my family. I never lied. I simply said, my story taught me something important. They thought success meant owning the biggest house, the nicest cars, the most expensive vacations. But they were wrong. Real success is sleeping peacefully, looking in the mirror without shame, knowing every dollar you own was earned honestly, and every relationship in your life was built on respect. Sometimes, I still look at the old message on my phone. If you don't help your sister, don't ever call me your father again. For years, I thought those words were a threat. Now I understand. They were freedom. Because the day they cut me out of their version of family was the day I finally found the courage to build my own. Revenge isn't always about destroying the people who hurt you. Sometimes the greatest revenge is exposing the truth, rebuilding your life, and succeeding so completely that their betrayal becomes only one chapter in your story, not the ending.